There's a new report about the conditions in which migrant children are being held, and that report reveals that in a converted Walmart where kids are locked in a shelter with very little outdoor time, detained migrant kids are being forced to recite the United States Pledge of Allegiance. One employee asked why this is being done, said that the detained migrant children must respect the Pledge of Allegiance in order to respect the United States. The same Washington Post report exposes that there are so many kids at some of these centers that there are prison-style head counts being done, and we actually got pictures of some of the criminals being bussed around, very just little kids. I mean, it is insane when you see little kids in prison-style buses, which we are showing our television audience right now. Employees at the converted Walmart were also told to discourage the kids from speaking their native language, usually Spanish, although at some locations that policy has reportedly been reversed. The absurdity of having to recite the pledge, which says in it, with liberty and justice for all, at a camp where children are being caged. I'd call it ironic, but it's too soft a word. Ironic would actually not do justice to how crazy what's going on is. We don't want you in our country, and we don't even think you should necessarily have constitutional rights, but you'd better pledge allegiance to our flag anyway, because otherwise, I don't even want to know what it is that would happen to them.
I'm honestly at a loss for words here. There are so many ironies. It's ironies built on top of irony.
Yeah, it's an enigma wrapped in perversions of justice is what I would call it. And while we're on the topic of the Pledge of Allegiance, we don't often talk about the pledge. Whenever we mention the Pledge of Allegiance, parents will email me. They'll say, David, I don't want my kids saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school, but I don't want them to get into trouble. It's important to know that the Supreme Court decided in 1943, students cannot be required to recite the Pledge of Allegiance. It follows from that if you can't be required to recite it, you can't be punished for not reciting it. But the problem is that lots of schools and teachers don't know this. Some of them might know but not care. But it is the law. And unfortunately, there is a lot of stigma in schools in parts of the country that still do the pledge for not doing it. And even the recitation of the pledge is very cult-like. I was lucky enough to go to a school in a more progressive place in Western Massachusetts, where by the time I was in middle school, so roughly like 1996, the pledge was out. But in a lot of parts of the country, this is still being done, and it really should end.
I think we should get rid of it, at least, when it comes to saying it in schools, right? Because it is cultish. But also, even if someone does exercise the right not to say the pledge and they're not forced to do it by any teacher or administrator, it still singles them out. It like stigmatizes it a little bit.
No
and then
question about it.
People wonder why they're not saying the pledge like everyone else.
Yeah, and so I get the concern from parents, even if they know that the child can't be forced to say it, that the child can't, strictly speaking, be punished for it. You still are aware of the fact that depending on which part of the country your child goes to school in, there can be sort of implicit consequences to it, even if not formal. To wrap up the child internment angle of the story, I hope that history will judge this phase, and I hope it's just a phase, harshly in the future. I don't know if they will, but I hope that when we look back at this era, it will be seen as a black mark, the black mark of this sort of authoritarian Trumpist slide to the right. And I am not confident that that will happen, but I hope that it will. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @DPakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. A day of not great news today, but we're here and we've got much more coming up. Today's program is made possible in part by Futur, which is a social forecasting game for your phone where players come together and compete with each other to predict future events. You go on the app, find a future event you feel confident enough about to make a prediction, and make a bet on the outcome that you think will happen using the app's in-game fake currency. If your prediction is right, you're rewarded with more points. You can compete with others who are making their own prediction to see who is the best forecaster. There's no real-world money or cryptocurrency involved. The fun of Futur is interacting with others and showing the world your skills at predicting the future. Will Democrats take the White House this year? Will Trump run for re-election? Will Trump ever build the wall? You can go ahead and make your predictions, show off your forecasting skills, And there are also monthly competitions and prizes for top forecasters. And I'm on Futur. You can wager on my predictions. You can also browse the politics category for lots of interesting questions. Go to futur.com to sign up and make forecasts. It's free. It's on Android and iOS, as well as on web browsers. And right now on Futur, you can win cash prizes for correct predictions about the World Cup. Check it out at futur.com.